Mike, I'm never one to nitpick, but I would have rephrased this, that they're leaning toward trading the number one pick. They may want to trade the number one pick, but last I checked, a trade takes two. And so somebody, I don't know, the Colts, has got to make them the kind of offer that would make it worthwhile to trade down from number one. You understand what I'm saying? Like maybe the Colts are just saying, we'll sit tight. We'll make you take Jalen Carter, and we'll be satisfied with whoever we get. Because the Cardinals ain't taking a quarterback. So they're trying to drum up. They're trying to drum up interest is what they're doing. That's
they got leverage. I think they got leverage. This is brilliant on the part of Ryan Poles because if you're leaning toward it, you got at least one person or two on the hook, and maybe you want three or four. So hey, we're leaning toward this. Somebody might jump in wait a minute.
But Charles, this is why it's like the smokescreen, silly season, whatever you want to call this time of year. It's like it's just so obvious because no shit you're leaning toward it. You got a quarterback already. They got teams that need a quarterback. It's like then here's another report, Charles. They're meeting with all the top quarterbacks at the combine. Well, you know what I call that? A waste of time. Because you got a guy and you ain't taking the guy. What's your read on all this stuff, Charles?
They're open. I mean, they're open for business. I mean, that's it. A lot of people are gonna write what they want to write right now, and some of it's gonna seem obvious. But I had a chance to talk to someone from the franchise, and I think what's interesting is they're not just talking to quarterback needy teams. And I think that like Detroit might be a team that's also spoken to them. I don't want to say. I will say this.
Whoa!
It's not. Here, let me tell you.
That's our team. That's our team.
It's not just quarterback needy teams. It is teams that are in search of an elite player, and I think Jalen Carter is looked at as being an elite level player, and I think that what the Bears want to happen, and this was, is they put their cards on the table as much as you really could, is they want every quarterback to come and throw. Now, we'll see what happens with Bryce Young, but every other quarterback that's projected in the top 10 is going to throw right now.
Oh, gosh.
They want them all to come out, light it up. They want Carter to have a great combine. They basically want, great interviews. I think he's going to do most everything at Georgia's Pro Day. They basically want everybody to entice everyone in the top 6-7 picks. I think they would be happy if they stuck inside the top 6-7. So if you look inside the top 7,
because they got
I would say
needs,
any of those 7 picks is that's a potential trade partner.
Hello? Yeah, this is Ryan. Who's this? Brad? Brad who? Brad Holmes? Listen, Detroit could want an elite player all they want. They got to find it somewhere else. I know Detroit traded T.J. Hockenson to Minnesota, so maybe these interdivisional trades, intradivisional trades are no big deal anymore. But when you got me at Detroit, you mean to tell me the Bears would allow Detroit to move up to number one no matter what they're paying?
Well, okay. Here. Let me tell you how Detroit is approaching this though. This is kind of interesting.
Right.
I also had a chance to talk to somebody from Detroit's organization. They're like, we have 2 first-round picks on our roster from last draft. So if we're in a situation where we see a player and we have 2 first-round picks we're sitting on and we think this is an all-pro level player, and this is a draft that's deep at tight end, okay, which is that's one way of saying it's not great. Okay, great. It's an awesome tight end draft. It's thin at the top elsewhere. Other than, Robinson, the running back out of Texas, Jalen Carter out of UGA, Bryce Young, there's only really considered like elite level players, 1 or 2 at a few various positions. I think Carter absolutely could be a player that Detroit, if they felt like we can package.
It's just taboo. No, it's not that. No, that's not the part that trips me. It's just
in the division,
it's taboo. It's just taboo for me.
No,
and maybe I'm old school.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think with draft picks. I don't think with draft picks. I think it's.
I know the Eagles did it with the Cowboys a couple of years ago with Devontae Smith.
Hey, listen, you were the one who broke Donovan McNabb getting traded from Philly to Washington. That happened inside the division, right? It's not.
Don't remind me of that. Number 1, number 2. Donovan was at the end. Okay, but okay, maybe I'm making.
I was just trying to remind folks. That's all.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you.
I'm getting it. Hey, Mike. Mike, this is hearing Charles say this just confirms it. I put in the feed that I'm starting to get the bug for franchise mode. I'm back in. Like, this stuff is great. The Bears at number 1. They're a team, the franchise. I know you've already started. Don't lie on TV.
I have.
You started.
And there's so much work for them to do. It's not franchise mode sidebar is not as good as it was back in our day. They got so many things that they can improve upon, but nobody does. But you were saying, continue.
But I would say, I'm still getting the bug for it. And I want to say, Charles, because you alluded to it, talking about the Lions. They've got that pick. I want to say shout out to Detroit, shout out to Seattle, and to Philadelphia. You look at those top 10 picks, and those teams have picks in the top 10 that don't belong to them. So, I mean, this is really a great year. This is a great follow-up. Okay, it's a great encore for general managers who did their work last spring, and they're reaping the benefits in 2023. Do you think all of them could be in favor, could be in play, not necessarily for number 1, but moving up even more? I mean, if you're Philadelphia, you're at 10, you just lost in the Super Bowl. You got a young roster, you got a young quarterback, you got some cap flexibility, extra draft picks. Same thing with Seattle. Do you see either of those two teams doing something?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think inside that top really 7. It's possible for any of those teams to move up to 1, either for the quarterback that they choose. Like, let's say Will Levis goes out and just blows it up, right? He's got the big arm. I think he's the one that really has the potential to tip the apple cart in terms of being the number 1 overall pick. I think if he comes out, shows the arm talent, sits through some interviews, and people sit there and go, his ceiling is higher than we thought because we think we can give him higher level coaching consistently. He's a worthy number 1 overall pick. I think that's the kind of thing that could shake up the top of the draft. But again, I'm telling you, Carter is the type of defensive player that I think teams that have an edge rusher, okay, it's very attractive thinking about pairing him, sitting him next to a dominant edge rusher. So Detroit, who really, not only they take Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, they found 2 edges this last season. I think it's very attractive to them to think if we could sit him next to Aiden Hutchinson, it would be.
You talking about the Houston kid? Hutchinson, Houston, and Carter?
Aiden, Houston. Yeah, Hutchinson, Houston, and Carter. I think there's an attractive edge to that. One other thing, too, that makes this really intriguing, and Michael Howell, you'll love this. The teams that have 2 first-round picks also, knowing what next year's draft looks like versus this year's draft, I think if they feel like they can get what they want with their first pick and they don't have to package 2 first-round picks to move up, I think all of those teams will entertain offloading that second number 1 overall for a 2024 first. Sort of Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman's always like, hey, if I've got 2 first-round picks, I can always trade that second for another first-round pick down the road and other assets. That's what he did this year. Remember, he had multiple first-round picks last year. He picked up an extra first-round pick this year by offloading one. Those teams will all consider that because next year, higher level, higher ceiling quarterback draft, Caleb Williams, Drake May, obviously, and then there will be other candidates that arise. If they can afford sliding a pick back, if they meet the need that they want or the player that they want with that first rounder, I think you could look at all 3 of those potentially looking at sliding that second first-round pick for a future one if they can find someone who is looking for another first-round pick.
Want to get into specific prospects in a second, but so the Packers coaching staff is not going, correct? Did I read that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Are there any other coaching staffs that are not attending the combine? And I just wonder, because Charles, I'll see you there, man. It'll be like old times. I just wonder how the combine, because in 2 ways. If I can combine 2 different subjects, but I know you can handle it. Culturally, the conversation around the combine, and whether it's antiquated, to put it lightly, when it comes to what these players, mostly black players, are exposed to when it comes to measurements and prodding and poking and prodding, putting on display half naked. The conversation's been having for years, but it seems to have ratcheted up and reached the highest level of the league. Meanwhile, the usefulness of the actual combine. DeMaurice Smith was saying it's nothing other than just reducing people's value based on their medical information. But now you got coaches apparently thinking there's a better use of their time. So just the combine in 2023 in a nutshell, Charles.
I think it is. I think it's in the process of changing, and I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. I think that you saw a number of players in those pandemic years who there was very limited workouts that happened. Obviously, the combine was erased, in effect, and you saw a lot of teams that continued to lean back on tape. What do we see on tape from these players? If anyone's telling you the truth, they'll just tell you, look, the medical is what's most important. I'll give you a good example. Kayvon Thibodeau last year. The medical was extremely important. The interviews were important, but I talked to at least one general manager. I don't want to get too specific how many general managers did this, but at least one general manager who did his interview over Zoom, like as in he wasn't in Indy, he was in on the interview, but he was on Zoom. So Thibodeau was sitting there with a room full of people plus the GM on Zoom. And the GM was like, I didn't need to be there for that, but I wanted to be in on the interview. So even that, the ability for Zoom and all these different things, it's changing whether or not staffs feel like they need to be there for a long time. I see general managers who are only popping in for a couple of days. Some, as you saw with the Packers, aren't sending coaching staffs. Little aggressive, a little weird. But again, it all depends on how you feel your area scouts are doing. And then when it comes down to the measurables, I will say this about the measurables. The only thing that teams really use those measurables for is to categorize from a data set standpoint, where does this player fit in terms of the data sets we have on players in the past? So people always talk about, we talk about hand size, right? We always make jokes about, Kenny Pickett had tiny hands. That means he'd be a terrible quarterback, whatever, because of the you fumble when you have smaller hands. No, teams just want to see how many teams in the history of football have had success with quarterbacks who have, say, 8.5-inch hands. Well, it's only, let's say it's only happened once. So if you get down to it and you're trying to parse prospects and they're really close, if they're extremely close, you're going, all right, well, what can we use to try to separate these two players where we're really, it's either or. Well, one's got bigger hands. The data set historically says, though, that's the more historically successful player in the NFL. That means the risk is it's leaning on the other player. It sounds stupid, but it really is just getting down to the tiniest little measurements when you get to a point where you just can't decide between two players. That rarely happens, but it does happen, and they love to, some GMs and, personnel guys like to have that extra little bit of information.
I'm talking to two reporters here, so I wonder if y'all feel me on this. The reporter in me just kind of picks up and cringes a little bit, Charles, when you say, general manager is there on Zoom. I don't need to be there. Mike, think about Don Squire, okay? I don't need to be there. I'm getting everything I need on Zoom. No. It's always better to be in the room. Something happens to your reportorial brain when you're in the same room.
To say it's an inexact science, Mike, to say it's an inexact science and then to introduce variables seems a little counterintuitive.
Okay.
Hey, and here's the other thing. In the newspaper industry, somebody in the newspaper industry is saying, all right, tell it now. When you have the resources to travel and you tell the higher ups that you don't need to travel, that's a bad precedent to set. No, we need to travel. We need to be there.
Let me give you a counter argument to that based on something that happened last year. Okay. I'm not going to say the name of the prospect because I don't want to get into it with the kid. It's fine. Like, he had a good rookie season, whatever. It's not so it's highly prized prospect, right? We're talking about a kid in the top end of the first round. He's going through interviews, right? And he was one of these prospects that happened to sit on an interview with the general manager, wasn't present, whatever. Well, when he was walking out the door, there's like a table with snacks on it, right? And he just grabbed snacks, and some people in the room were kind of off-put by it. That he was just like on his way out the door, grabbed some snacks without really saying anything, just like straight up grabbed them, and they, were kind of looking at each other like, I don't know what I think about that. Like and it was weird. It planted this kind of negative seed. It planted a little bit of a negative seed in their head about, like, is the kid selfish? Now, see, that's it. Michael, you say, here's the funny thing. Michael, you say it's some dumb shit, right? Like, you say that. Here's the thing. If you're not in the room to see that, you don't end up processing it. Doesn't mean anything to you. And I will put it to you this way.
That's true.
The way he played as a rookie, wasn't nobody giving a shit about the potato chips that he grabbed and put out the door.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, because this is what I'm saying. It's like, if it's a breakfast buffet, right, you don't just grab a plate and make the plate. I get that, okay? Because I've been at hotels, and it's been like, oh, is that ours? That's not ours? Okay, I'm not just going to go help myself. But if it's a bunch of snacks just sitting there,
let me get these.
That's what we're there for. Let me get these. It's just some snacks.
And
the question is, what kind of snacks? If you want to do some scouting, what kind of snacks?
Right.
What kind? That's your scouting. Because instead of saying, oh, is he selfish? Be like, wait, he picked the M&Ms and not the Jujubes. He picked the Butterfinger and not the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Now you're scouting. So that's just more information as far as I'm concerned. The kid likes snacks.
I'm just saying, this is the type of stuff that happens here where you're surprised sometimes by what gets into the heads of evaluators when they're sitting in a room. And as Michael Holley said, they're reading body language, which I do think that's helpful. I actually do. I really do. I believe that's helpful. But I think sometimes it can go too far. Like, that was one of those moments where I'm like, yeah, I kind of get it. But, really in the big grand scheme of things, does this really mean anything?
I guarantee you, whoever thought that he was being selfish, Michael, all it did was confirm something. It was confirmation bias. It was something that they probably already went into it thinking about the kid, and he did something. And they were like, "You see, I told you."
I think that's true. I think that's true. I think that's legitimate.
But here's the thing: this is going to happen whether there's a combine or not. Like Thomas Dimitroff has mentioned this, and other people have too. He said, when you're an evaluator, when you're an NFL evaluator, he said, we all do it. We wind up doing things. We think we can evaluate everything. We evaluate the cashier at the grocery store. We evaluate our relationships. We're evaluating everything because we just get into that mindset where we're just, oh, we don't like that. Well, how about this? And sometimes it goes too far. So whether there's a combine or not, that process is going to happen. Let me ask you this, Charles. I'm wondering if I'm crazy, and Mike, help me out on this. Because I'm looking at these Jalen Ramsey reports, and it's not necessarily about Jalen Ramsey, just the cornerback position overall. 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, yeah, go get you a shutdown corner. Go get him. I think there may be two guys like that in the league. I don't think Jalen Ramsey is one of them. Sauce Gardner is. I'm kind of thinking that the cornerback position, I don't want to say overrated. That overrated is overrated. But I think you can get by without a Jalen. You can win a championship without a Jalen Ramsey, Sauce Gardner, Darrelle Revis, back in the day, that kind of guy. Because the league has changed, kind of devaluing that position.
Chiefs just did it.
Am I crazy? Am I crazy
Chiefs
to think
just did it. Right? The Chiefs just did it. Right? Chiefs just won a title without having a top 2-3 lockdown cornerback. Right? I think we can agree on that. Has it changed? I think the metric of how you value the players. Okay, when we came in, we're all covering the NFL. One of the first things we learn is the staple positions that you pay: left tackle, shutdown cornerback, quarterback. And that's where you start, right? Those three. Well, those three were like the building blocks, right? If you can have a cornerback who cuts the field, right? Defensive end, right? That's four, really. Yeah. Those are the four. I think now, because of where the salaries are going, teams are now trying to figure out what one of the holy quartet or two of the holy quartet can we live without paying a top, end salary. If we're the Cleveland Browns, we're going to pay Myles Garrett. We're going to pay Deshaun. That means we probably can't pay a left tackle at the very tippy top of the left tackle market. We probably can't pay a corner.
They just paid Denzel Ward, didn't they? Well, not tippy top.
But I'm talking tippy top. I'm talking and Ramsey. That's the thing that Ramsey plays into this for the Rams that everybody should know. The Rams knew when this season started it was likely going to be his last because they knew at some point he's going to want to do an extension because Jalen Ramsey's sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm a top corner in the league. I'm an all-pro level cornerback. The all-pro level wide receivers who I am, paid to cover and erase are making $25 million a year. So what does that mean? That means I should be making $25 million a year.
Okay, but is he still? I mean, I know he got the reputation. I know he's a big name, but is he though? Ish. I don't know Jalen Ramsey. I was gonna say, Michael, but as to this, is like it depends on who you're talking about and what team. Right. If you're the Rams,
I don't evaluate that, yeah.
and the bottom just fell out, and you've been saying F them picks, but eventually that bill's gonna come due. If you got an opportunity to get another team to buy into the Jalen Ramsey mystique, then you get them to trade for Jalen Ramsey, and you start to retool and rebuild this roster, both from a salary cap standpoint and a draft pick standpoint. I like Jalen Ramsey. I think he's had a great career. I don't know if Jalen Ramsey at this point is the Jalen Ramsey that he was in Jacksonville and when he first got to the Rams, or even when he was at the Rams last year.
Okay, but he may. Well, I'll say this too. We do see some guys who, especially corners, this does happen. I'll say Darius Slay is a good example. Darius Slay, when Detroit dealt him, people were like, well, is Slay really, is he that elite level corner? And then he went to Philly. Yeah. Sometimes a change of scenery reinvigorates a player.
Right. Different system too, yeah.
Yeah, different system, different coaching staff, different teammates, and they can snap back. I mean, remember, you have a lot of people watching this show who are young enough to not really know this, but I think Pac-Man Jones went to Cincinnati and had the best portion of his career. Because he really changed into a player that I think whatever it was, being there with Marvin changed how he looked at the game and focused on the game.
I did not have Pac-Man Jones on my Charles Robinson bingo card today, but that great pull, great reference. Yeah. You know who can't play regardless of system? This just crossed. The Commanders cut Carson Wentz. They saved $26 million against their cap by cutting Carson Wentz. I don't give a damn about Carson Wentz. I want to talk about the guy who seems to he's gonna be the QB1 under Eric Bieniemy and that offense, and that's Sam Howell. Should we believe, and by we, I mean people who are in dynasty leagues who have Sam Howell.
Oh man!
And like, you know what? I'm in Superflex leagues, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna stick with Sam Howell.
I'm like,
is this?
Why is he asking about Sam Howell? Charles, I should have known.
Because Gary wants to know. Because our Commanders fan producer wants to know. That's why I'm asking.
Gary don't want to know. Even Gary, even the Commanders fan doesn't want to know about Sam Howell. But Mike Smith does.
He's probably not gonna be there anyway. But I mean, like, I've seen some mock drafts linked in Anthony Richardson, who I love. Like, are they really gonna roll with Sam Howell, who once upon a time was gonna be a top 5 pick?
Yeah, that's it. That's the crazy thing about Sam Howell to me is I first became aware of him because what do we do every year during the draft as soon as the draft's over?
Look at the next draft.
Yeah, we're like, hey, who's coming up? Like and I always ask about the quarterbacks, like who's a year out, who's 2 years out. Tell me about the next 2 quarterback drafts because every team out there is evaluating juniors whenever they go into pro days, and now some of them are even kind of taking a little peek at the sophomores because they're like, these guys will come out as juniors. So I remember Sam Howell, it was like, oh, well, this kid could be a number 1 pick. He could be a top 3 pick. He could be a top 5 pick. And then he became a 5th round pick. And I was always like, what happened? So I ended up watching him in the preseason because I was really interested. I'm like, I remember the time when this guy was it. He was going to be it. I liked him. When I watched him, I was like, I kind of like how this guy plays. Like he looked, now again, it's preseason. Right. It gets it is what it is. But I mean, I thought when he got his opportunity last year, I was kind of like, maybe this guy is better than it.
They waited
maybe
too
he's
long.
Not a top 5.
I don't know what they were waiting on.
I do not know what he is ultimately going to become. I would be surprised if they do not address quarterback in another way. You don't want to just hang everything on the Sam Howell, hopes and dreams. But I don't know that they go out and they draft another young quarterback, in this draft to compete with him unless something happens. I mean, I guess we could always see what happens with this class of guys. But I thought he was interesting. He was fun. It was the same with Drew Lock, though. There was a time where I looked at Drew Lock and I was like, wow, he's kind of interesting. Maybe he's got some tools. It would be a shocker to see him put it together. But we just watched Brock Purdy at least, look, he won over 2 of the 3 of us over the course of this season, and he was the last pick in the draft. You know, I don't know. Maybe there's something there to work with Sam Howell. So all of you Dynasty League drafters, Michael Smith, hang on to Sam Howell. Maybe.
I'm with Mike. I mostly don't care about Carson Wentz, but just quickly, does anybody sign him? Does anybody say, not as a starter? Anybody sign him? Hey,
right,
good backup.
Okay.
We can work with him.
Is he the backup?
Frank Reich. Frank Reich one more time in Carolina now. One more time.
Now let's not like lose our Carson Wentz has talent. Okay, there's no question he has talent. He has more talent than probably most backups in the NFL. So is there a team out there that could look at him as an attractive backup? Absolutely. You know, do I think there's a market out there? I don't think there's a market out there for him to be a starter. I don't think there's a market out there for a team even to say, hey, we're going to bring him in and let him compete for a starting job. I think that there's a market for him to be signed, likely on like a 1-year deal, where a team says, we want to, we're going to give him a chance to come in and, compete with the other quarterbacks in the roster. We want to see him. We want to evaluate him. Similar to a few years ago, what Seattle did with Geno Smith. They're like, we think he's got talent. We think he can be a supporter for our starting quarterback. Let's see if there's something there to reclaim.
I'm so glad you said that. Number one, I do think it takes a special type of person to be a backup and embrace being a backup and manage the starter and the offensive coaching staff and so on and so forth. But Geno Smith is a great example of be careful who you write off, because nobody would have seen him. Of course, he didn't write back, and nobody would have seen him coming. Last question before we let you go. The market right now belongs to Derek Carr. Like, there's no competition. It feels like, dude, pick your team. This $35 million, I realize that's Kirk Cousins' money, and I am not trying to count another man's money, okay? I'm not getting in this man's pockets. But shouldn't money be the least of his concerns right now? And shouldn't he be like this long process that David referenced? It's like, dude, like, pick your team now before Aaron Rodgers eventually, sees the light and has some kind of clarity or whatever team he wants. Like, why is Derek Carr slow playing this thing?
I think he's slow playing it because of, like, when you listen to what David Carr is saying, I think it is not so much about money. I think it is like, there is a feeling like if it doesn't work, this next destination doesn't work. It's like now he's fully off track. There's a chance that he goes somewhere if he gets the right situation, plays well, and then he plays the next, 7-8 years of his career in this destination.
He goes to the Hall of Fame in New York.
Look, he could.
I'm sorry.
Look, let's put it this way, right? When Ryan Tannehill, when he got traded from Miami and he went to Tennessee, there was the right place for him to have a second life, right, in his career. Or you could be Kurt Warner and have a New York Giants stop. And then it's like, whoa, what happened?
And you're a bridge. They use you as a bridge to another guy.
And then you're a bridge, and then what do? You go to Arizona thinking you're going to end up being the backup to Matt Leinart. And, it took – so you don't want to have that middle team. You don't want that Giants experience a la Kurt Warner. You want it to be the next team is your next 8 to 10-year team for a Derek Carr.
Good to see you, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Charles.
Very soon.
Stuff, man.
Take it easy, gentlemen.
Mike, forget about franchise mode. It's all about dynasty, dude. I'm telling you.
Dynasty now, huh?
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.